In this video, I'm going to reveal 5 things you didn't know about Major Dick Winters, who is portrayed by Damian Lewis in Band of Brothers. For instance, did you know that Dick Winters was not only a paratrooper, but also an Army Ranger? Or that his religion was neither Quaker nor Mennonite as implied in the series? You also learn the actual reason that Dick Winters didn't drink alcohol, which had nothing to do with his religion. Let me know in the comments which of the following 5 things you already knew about Major Dick Winters. Number 5. Dick Winters was not a Quaker or a Mennonite. In episode 2 of Band of Brothers, the men, specifically Bill Garnier, joke that Winters must be a Quaker. Garnier comes to this conclusion mainly because Winters doesn't drink alcohol. After Winters informs Garnier that he's not a Quaker, Garnier jokes to the men that Winters must be a Mennonite since he's from Lancaster County. In reality, Winters was a Lutheran Christian and is buried in a Lutheran cemetery. It is worth noting that Dick Winters' mother had been raised in a Mennonite family, but she did not adopt the religion in adulthood. However, she did promote certain Mennonite values in the home, including the values of honesty, hard work, and respect for others. My upbringing, I had this strict discipline that follows the Mennonite group, Winters said in the documentary Hang Tough. As you look back now, you appreciate it. At the time, it just made you a little bit different than the other fellows. If we look at Eisenhower, who wasn't too bad a leader in World War II, do you realize his parents were Mennonite? However, as I'll explain next, religious values were not the reason that Dick Winters didn't touch alcohol. Number 4. The real reason Dick Winters didn't drink alcohol. It is assumed from watching Band of Brothers that Dick Winters didn't drink alcohol due to his religious beliefs. However, this is not accurate. In a rare interview shared by the Gettysburg Museum of History, Dick Winters explained exactly why he didn't drink alcohol. My grandfather on my father's side became an alcoholic and passed along at an early age because of drinking, said Winters. Somehow or other, that stuck in my head. I'm never going to let that happen to me. And as a result, really, I never did. I never took a drink. And it wasn't hard because as a child, I had been warned that my grandfather had been an alcoholic, and I did not want that to happen to me. Now to be clear, this isn't to say that alcohol never touched Dick Winters' lips. Later in the interview, he admitted to trying it. Winters recalled, "On things like smoking and drinking, my father impacted me. He said, 'Now look, if you want to drink, this is completely up to you. If you want to smoke, that's all right with me. But I want you to do it in the house, not go outside of the house.' So he gave me a drink or two of beer, and I didn't like it. So that was that. And yeah, I can take a puff on his cigar. I didn't like that. So that ended it. There was never any desire to smoke or drink after that." There is a scene in episode 2 of Band of Brothers where after the successful assault on Brecourt Manor on D-Day, some of the soldiers, including Bill Garnier, Don Malarkey, and Buck Compton, offer Winters a bottle of French wine as a celebratory gesture. Winters accepts and takes a sip, calling it a day of firsts. This moment is indeed based on real life. In Dick Winters' memoir, Beyond Band of Brothers, he describes taking a shot of hard cider on D-Day, not wine. "When we left the field in front of Brecourt Manor, I took my first shot of hard cider," Winters recalled. "I was thirsty as hell and I needed a lift. And when one of the men made me the offer, I shocked them by accepting. I thought at the time it might slow down my train of thoughts and reactions, but it didn't." Number 3. Dick Winters was nominated for the Medal of Honor. Dick Winters was considered for the Medal of Honor for his role in leading a team of 12 paratroopers from his own and other companies against approximately 50 German soldiers during the Brecourt Manor assault. Like in Band of Brothers, this was the first battle of the war that Winters took part in. By that point, command of Easy Company had fallen on Winters' shoulders since Lieutenant Thomas Meehan was still missing due to the fact that the plane he'd been on had been shot down during the D-Day landings, killing all on board. Like in the series, Winters and his men successfully incapacitated 4 German 105mm artillery guns along a hedgerow near a farmhouse known as Brecourt Manor. The guns had been firing onto Causeway Exit Number 2 in an effort to impede the U.S. forces coming off Utah Beach. In one of the gun positions, Winters discovered a German map that had all of their artillery and machine gun locations in the area marked on it. Winters got this extremely valuable piece of intelligence to Lewis Nixon, who ran it to Utah Beach and up the chain of command. For his role in the Brecourt Manor assault, Dick Winters was considered for the Medal of Honor, and he almost got it. However, the Army had a quota system in place that allowed for only one recipient per division, and the Army had already given the Medal of Honor to Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cole from the 101st. Cole had led what became known as Cole's Bayonet Charge across an exposed causeway and open field to capture and hold 4 farm buildings during the Battle of Normandy. Holding this area allowed for Utah and Omaha beaches to link up and for the town of Carentan to be liberated. Though Dick Winters didn't get the Medal of Honor for Brecourt Manor, he did receive his nation's second highest military decoration, the Distinguished Service Cross, which was presented to him by Lieutenant General Omar Bradley. Winters' actions at Brecourt Manor also earned him a promotion to captain. Of the Medal of Honor nomination, Dick Winters said, "I'm very appreciative. It's quite an honor. But quite frankly, at the time they handed out these decorations, up until that point, I'd never given it any thought at all. The difference between different decorations, it had not been one of those things you had studied about. The difference between a Bronze Star, a Silver Star, a Distinguished Service Cross, or a Congressional Medal of Honor. One of the many things we didn't know anything about. We only learned about that later." Winters said that there were very few decorations handed out in their outfit, and while in some ways that's a bad thing, looking back on it, it may have been better because it meant that everybody was being treated the same. "The only medal you got was a Purple Heart when you were hit, and there was no denying that," said Winters. Following the success of Band of Brothers, a bill was introduced in Congress to reconsider Dick Winters for the Medal of Honor. However, the bill died in the House Armed Services Committee Subcommittee on Military Personnel in 2007. Number 2. Winters was not only a paratrooper, he was also a U.S. Army Ranger. Many people don't realize that in addition to being a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne during World War II, Major Dick Winters later became a U.S. Army Ranger in 1951. Winters was recalled to active duty for Korea while still working at Nixon Nitration Works in New Jersey, Lewis Nixon's family business. He had orders to report to Fort Campbell in Kentucky, where he would join the 11th Airborne Division. However, according to his memoir, Beyond Band of Brothers, he said that the Army granted reservist officers a delay of 6 months to report for active duty. During that time, Winters traveled to Washington, D.C. to speak with General Tony McAuliffe, the Chief of Personnel for the U.S. Army. McAuliffe remembered Winters, and the two had an informal conversation. Winters, who had a wife and 1-year-old son at the time, asked to be excused from going to Korea. Instead of being sent directly overseas, Winters was then sent to Fort Dix, New Jersey, where he was assigned to be a regimental plans and training officer. He held that position for a short time, but grew frustrated trying to train officers who couldn't care less about attending classes. Eager for a change, Winters volunteered for Ranger School. He completed Ranger School and earned the Ranger Tab in 1951. It wasn't long before he received orders for Korea. On the cusp of entering another war, he traveled to Seattle, the port of debarkation. He was going through the preparation and indoctrination process when an administrative officer walked in the room and announced, "There is a new order. Any officer who has been recalled involuntarily does not have to continue to Korea. He can resign. If there are any officers here who would care to take advantage of this, please step forward." As stated in Band of Brothers, Winters had enough of war. He stepped forward, and that was how his days in the military came to an end. Number 1. Dick Winters didn't want the statue of him in Normandy. Along the causeway to Utah Beach in Normandy, France, stands a 12-foot-tall statue of Major Dick Winters. But did you know that Winters originally did not want the sculpture of him commissioned? The family initially rejected the idea via email, so the proposal was brought directly to Winters. He agreed only under the terms that instead of the memorial honoring just him, it would honor all the junior officers who had leadership roles on D-Day. He didn't want anything to actually portray him, remarked sculptor Stephen Spears. Of the statue, Spears said, "I think that this is about all of the units. It's about the character and the strength of leadership." Artist Stephen Spears began work on the monument. However, the bronze statue wasn't completed and unveiled until June 6, 2012, a year and a half after Dick Winters' death, and 68 years after Winters jumped into Normandy on D-Day. It is officially referred to as the Richard D. Winters Leadership Monument. 2 years later, in June 2014, several actors from the series, including Damian Lewis, visited the monument for the D-Day 70th anniversary celebrations. The plaques attached to the base of the monument include a quote from Winters stating, "Wars do not make men great, but they do bring out the greatness in good men." Another plaque reads in part, "In honor of Dick Winters and all those American junior officers who led the way on D-Day, June 6, 1944. I hope you enjoyed these 5 little-known facts about Major Dick Winters. Let me know in the comments, how many did you already know, and what other interesting details about Dick Winters have we missed? Be sure to check out our other videos on Dick Winters that are linked on the screen, including why he walked off the set of Band of Brothers and the various issues he had with the series. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Hang tough, my friends.